You are listening to I Am Interchange.
I am interchange.
I am interchange.
I am Interchange.
Fostering curiosity, education, and empathy by exploring the controversial and the provocative.
I am Interchange.
Hey, welcome back, folks. Tate Chamberlin here to kick off this episode of the I Am Interchange Morning Show, focused on the issue of population control. My guest this morning is Danielle Egnew, a psychic medium and author who's currently in the midst of a tour challenging translating angelic messages for people in cities across the country. And as I came to learn, she's also very tapped into what she describes as heavy air traffic for unidentified flying objects over Yellowstone National Park, just a couple of hours from our Interchange recording studio.
It's a heavy geomagnetic center, and a lot of these craft use geomagnetic points on the Earth as GPS. So we've got a ton of them coming and going out of the park. It's like, okay, it's a heavy traffic day.
Danielle is a fourth-generation Montanan, born and mostly raised in Billings before pursuing a career in entertainment and music. Her early career included being signed with a small grunge label in Seattle and landing acting gigs before her desire to channel her connection to the beyond drew her back to Montana. Since then, her psychic abilities have been called on by police looking for information on cases and by people looking to have contact with lost loved ones. Although Danielle believes we are beyond the carrying capacity of Earth, she believes a mindful approach to how and why we have children, and eliminating our consumer behavior is the only way to avoid disaster. As a psychic, every timeline she sees in the future includes a dire lack of water, with evidence like the contamination disaster in Flint, Michigan, serving as one of hundreds or thousands of warning signs available to us now. Ultimately, Danielle believes nature will always win and will balance itself out, even if that means a drastic reduction in the human population. It's up to us to decide how our actions influence that balance and how we surf the avalanche of catastrophes we've already set off. The Nova Cafe, located in the heart of historic downtown Bozeman, Montana, is locally owned and serves up the best breakfast in town. Personally, I recommend the Baja. I love supporting the Nova Cafe because they support local artists, farmers, producers, and of course, I Am Interchange. Welcome everybody to the I Am Interchange Morning Show. I'm Tate Chamberlin, and I'm with Danielle Egnew, an author and psychic who recently located to Bozeman, Montana. Danielle's on her upcoming event, Should We Control Our Population Growth? We're catching up on how she got here and her perspective around the topic. Morning, Danielle. How's it going?
Good morning, Tate. It is awesome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so lovely to see you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. This is gorgeous. I love this.
We're at the Blunderbuss makeshift studio in the living room.
But I get the view. I've got this panoramic view of gorgeousness out here. It's fantastic.
Pretty good. We're pretty lucky.
Yes.
So what kind of projects are you working on right now?
Holy moly. Well, right now I am smack in the middle of my 2018 Ascension Tour, where I am going to cities all over the United States, and I am channeling angelic messages that have to do with our changing times and bringing specific information to people about the energies of the places where they live. So we've been to Portland, Oregon. We've been to Boulder, Colorado. We were in my hometown of Billings, Montana. Coming right up on the 20th of October, we're going to be in Minneapolis. Then we're going to be back here in Bozeman on November 3rd, and then Reno, Nevada after that.
So what are these angelic messages like?
They are kind of heavy duty. They're kind of hardcore. People think of angels as these fluffy little beings that are like, oh, God loves you. We all love everybody. Everybody's grand. Angels they're more like air traffic control for chaos, and they become very on point. So my job as a translator is to not make them sound as tough-lovey as they are exactly, because people don't exactly hear well when they perceive that they're being bossed, even though that's not what angels do.
So you kind of help translate from angels to common people who have questions?
Exactly. To a human culture. The human culture is very emotional. It is very subjective. It is very based upon contrast. We learn through contrast. The angelic realm totally does not operate that way. It either is or it isn't, and moving on to the next topic, So it's a fascinating position to be in the translator spot. So that's Ascension Tour. And then I just got back from Los Angeles. Just last week, in fact, where I was shooting some segments for Travel Channel for a brand new show that I can't announce quite yet. And I was talking about UFOs. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, good.
It was cool.
It's a good spot for UFOs. There's a couple of Montana books on UFOs.
We have a ton out here.
Yeah.
Gee, do you ever UFO watch out here?
I stargaze and occasionally see things that I can't quite put a finger on what it is.
Isn't that something?
I guess that would technically be an unidentified flying object.
Exactly. And we can thank Yellowstone Park for that. It's a heavy geomagnetic center.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah. And a lot of these craft use geomagnetic points on the Earth as GPS. So we've got a ton of them coming and going out of the park. It's like, okay, it's a heavy traffic day.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Billings. Montana from 4th grade on. My family is 3 generations there. I would be 4. And before that, my dad was in the Army. So we traveled all over the place.
So you're born in Billings, and then after that, you kind of became a transplant and followed your father around.
Yes. And then when I was in 4th grade, my parents got divorced. My dad stayed out in the Pacific Northwest. My mom and I headed back to Billings, and I was there all the way through high school and some college. And then I just kind of launched out into the world, and now I'm back.
What did you major in?
I majored in musical theater.
Yeah. And did you pursue that at all?
I pursued theater. I pursued acting. I pursued television, very much so. And in the middle of all that, got signed to a record label out in the Pacific Northwest during the grunge boom. So I kind of quit with all of that stuff. And now I'm back in television again, but it's in a reality perspective, not in a fictional perspective, which is completely bizarre and fun.
Awesome. Yeah, you brought your musical talent to one of the very first Interchange events.
Yes.
Which was awesome.
That was fun. I love that.
It's kind of evolved a little bit since then, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yes. But it's fun to be part of like the first shindig.
Yeah.
With the couches everywhere. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was a cool little lounge scene. So what was your first job like after college?
Man.
How did you really earn your money to live?
Very unimpressively, quite frankly. I was working at a yogurt shop. I would make extra money singing jingles in Billings because I didn't actually graduate.
Singing jingles for like the radio station?
Singing jingles for the radio stations for an independent production company that was quite prominent in Billings 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. I did not, as I mentioned, I didn't actually graduate. I left college, and now I look back on that and I'm like, geez, it would be a novel thing to have that bachelor's degree because I'd actually like to pursue astrobiology. But that would mean I'd have to go back and finish my bachelor's, which probably isn't going to happen. It's probably not going to happen.
Maybe an honorary degree.
Maybe an honorary, yeah. I left college. I had a full ride scholarship for musical theater, and I left about halfway through because I recognized that what I truly wanted to do, I did not need a degree for. And you don't need a degree if you're going to go and be talent. You get cast according to how tall you are, what your voice sounds like, what you look like, as grossly exterior as that all is. Yet that is the television business. So
You're saying shallow?
Oh, super shallow. Yeah. And yet it is the requirement for that business. So you don't need to have a bachelor's degree to go be an actor. And you certainly don't need to have a bachelor's degree to get signed to a record label. And those were all the things I wanted to do. So I left college and then ended up getting signed to a small label out in Seattle. And my whole life kind of took a big trajectory change from there.
So you became a professional musician and actor?
Yes.
And it paid the bills. You were doing it full time? And
it did for a while. And in the spirit of authenticity, those smaller deals, they hold you for a bit and then they run out. And so at the same time I was signed, I was working part-time at a Starbucks for half of that record deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's probably expensive out in that neck of the woods.
Seattle in the 90s was a rough one. Yeah.
When you moved out to Seattle, did you have a backup plan while you were there? Or were you just kind of all in on that experience and present?
I was heinously all in on the one plan. I mean, darn it, I was going to be a rock star. And I still have some really cool vinyl that was pressed by the label back in the day.
Cool.
That's just super cool. And I didn't quite understand the cycle of the music industry, that you're hot for a while and then you're not. And by that time, I had learned a tremendous amount about music business. This is back in 1991 to about 1993. And women in the music industry back then were not encouraged to do anything except for sing and maybe sleep with record executives. So those were the two jobs that we had. I dodged the record executive sleeping bullet because I came out as a gay woman very early on and just discouraged that because I just figured that was easier, and it was.
Yeah, of course.
It really was. So I'm like, let's just be friends and do shots, man.
It's really not going to happen.
Yeah, don't waste your shot money on me. Just don't do it. So from there, my life really expanded. When my record deal was over in Seattle, I moved back with a very dear friend who was interning at a management company that I was represented by in Seattle at that time. And we moved to Billings. And that's when myself and Kristen Coiner and Holly, was Holly Hoagland, she's now Holly Shaver, started Pope Jane. And that's the band that really got the national notoriety that launched me off into Los Angeles, and the rest is kind of history there. But it was out of Billings, Montana.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Tell me about the most accurate psychic experience you ever gave someone.
Oh, man. Let me think about one that blew my mind, because I've been doing this job for 15 years. And even though I get these bits of information all the time, it still just completely freaks me out sometimes when a client calls me back and says, oh my God, you said this and this and this and this. One of the most recent that really was kind of a jaw dropper for me was in the area of romance. And it was a jaw dropper because romance is really difficult to read on. Because you're talking about people's free will and all of their personal chaotic lessons. And I mean, good luck. That's like trying to chase the one cat through a room of 60 cats. It is a difficult read. And this woman had called and wanted to know about a partner. And I received this very vivid image of this person. So I'm describing this person right down to the shirt, right down to the tone of his voice, right down to the scruffy Pierce Brosnan, whole dew on his face. I mean, everything. And I received this woman's email, and she was freaking out saying, oh my God, here's what this person looked like, and here's what he sounded like. And he was wearing that exact shirt. So that was kind of a trip.
How long after?
Maybe not even a week and a half, 2 weeks. I mean, it was immediate. And other times where things have really blown my mind, but not in a good way. I volunteer a lot with law enforcement when they'll let me, because you've got a lot of police who are like, hey, crazy lady seeking media attention, get out of here, And
oh, yeah. So there's a sentiment sometimes of disrespect.
Yeah. And in full honesty, I honestly cannot blame law enforcement officials for thinking that, because there are a lot of crackpots that are just looking to get on the news or whatever. So they throw themselves at the police and say, oh my God, no, I'm a psychic, I want to help out, just because they want to get on camera. I was part of an organization called Find Me, and you were vetted to be on that. And it was part of 100 psychics and law enforcement officials that donated their time. And during that time period, this was not a Find Me case, yet during that time period, I worked on a cold case it was a TV pilot that was being shot. And that was disturbing, yet I was working with a team of really good psychics. And the information that I was given about super specific things that happened to this woman when she was taken, and telling those items to the police, because we were brought in to fill in some gaps for them. And being able to say, this is what happened to her. This is what she was beaten with. This is how they tied her up. And to watch the color drain out of the police face, and then to have them leave the room and come back in. And then you're getting questioned about, how do you know all these things? Where were you on the night of blah, blah, blah,
Oh
blah,
my gosh, how are you a suspect?
Yeah, and I'm like, wait. I swear to God, I didn't do this. You asked me to fill in these blanks. And energy is stored in everything, Tate.
Is that common, if it's like a cold case, like you said, to bring in someone like you to kind of help shake it up and add pieces to it?
If you have open law enforcement people, now I wish it was more common because they'll bring in bloodhounds to sniff up a trail. That's not considered mystical. I mean, bloodhounds have an aptitude humans don't. I happen to have a set of gifts that I would love to donate in this way. And there's no such thing as psychic evidence. Yet we are brought in when we have open-minded law enforcement to be able to put pieces into play that brings them to the next piece of hard evidence, just like a bloodhound sniffing something out of the grass.
Yeah, okay. Have you ever felt bad about the news you gave someone?
Yes.
What's that like?
Well, you just got to suck it up because my job is to translate for these angelic beings. My job is not to screen the news. And so I do have a tremendous amount of help in how I deliver the information. I don't sugarcoat it, yet angels are messengers. So they do help me with pretty basic translation, depending on who I'm speaking with. And what it's like is just kind of sickening, like you feel this gross feeling in your stomach because not only are you reading for that person right in the moment, you're actually looking ahead 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 6 days at how they process that information. And so you're like, okay. And you're trying to eliminate misunderstandings. You're trying to eliminate timelines for them that could potentially be more painful because you slipped up on one word. There's a tremendous attention to detail in the wording when you deliver these messages for me.
Do you have an example where it just like broke your heart?
Yes. And I'm going to try not to cry. I was working on a case and I was asked to come forward to read energies off of items that were left at a crime scene. And there was a young boy who was about 3 years old and he was missing. And I can't give a whole bunch of details, but it was down in California. And that got really upsetting because it turns out that the person who had done horrendous things to this little boy and killed him and did horrible things to the body to get rid of it was an uncle. And he was actually there with the parents crying and saying, oh my God, I hope we find this child. And just such a...
With you in the room?
Well, thank God I was not in the direct room, but I could see them down this hallway. And that was like my heart's even beating. Like I'm having like a weird post-traumatic stress response when I talk about this. My heart's beating really hard because I had to figure out a way to talk to the law enforcement about the fact that without, seeming like I'm just pointing my finger and saying that guy did it. I had to build the case of information enough
before you could make that.
Before I could make that proclamation. And what came through, and this was also the little boy he was young when he was killed. He was 3. However, this angel, and we all have angels, they walk with us, thank God, was helping me out. Not that this angel was trying to point fingers at that person. I was just asking, what was the deal? And oddly, this little boy, his spirit had nothing but huge love for his uncle. It was his favorite uncle, even though all these horrible things had happened. Because that's how we get when we're on the other side. We see people's pain. We don't see them for the broken machine that they are here. We see their soul. But having to actually tell the police that they said, can you describe this person? And this is the worst part, is I was describing this individual. And this is what got hard, is I had already described this person. And I heard voices in the hallway, and there were 2 windows, and I looked up, and I saw him sitting out. He was within my eye line.
The person you were describing.
Yes. And so then that kind of can look like, okay, well, you're just sitting here, and you saw somebody in the hallway, and now you're making... So that became... not only was I sick about it, I literally became scared because I'm like, oh my God, you're the guy that killed your nephew. But I can't come out and say that.
And he was found guilty? He
was, to my knowledge, truthfully, I kind of stopped following that case. It freaked me out so bad. To my knowledge, I was told that he came forward eventually and turned himself in because they put too much pressure on him. And I was not the only psychic working on that. So I think all of us who added our piece of the pie was enough information to get him to crack. And I had specific information. My information was from the perspective of the child. So I had specific things he said and specific things he was doing. So if the police sat down, they could just hypothetically run those things by a person and see how they reacted. And I'm sure I wasn't the only psychic getting that information, when somebody's that close to a case. Yet it was pretty awful.
Geez, it's very heartfelt and heartbreaking.
It's icky in my job to see how many people's wounds turn into real life monsters. And our wounds, everybody starts the same. Everybody starts this loving, beautiful, sweet baby. And depending on the compounded wounds and depending how we process those wounds, we can turn into a savior or we can turn into a monster. And that's kind of a trip in my field to actually see that turning point in people's lives.
And read that energy.
Yeah.
What does being a psychic have to do with world issues?
I think we can really help. I think we can help. Just like the bloodhound, I think we can come in and say, hey, gang, here is information that I'll just speak specifically for myself because everybody who's in my field, they're all wonderful. They all have incredible gifts that are independent. For me, for instance, I could sit down and say, okay, look, here is the energy that's pulled off of this historical piece. Here are the types of individual struggles the government was having dealing with the Nazis. Here is where we're repeating history. And here are some heavy timelines that are forming because of our choices now that are going to be unavoidable in 2 or 3 years. So do we really want to choose that future? So I would love to sit on like a UN think tank or something or advise someone who makes decisions. I think that would be awesome.
Awesome. That would be fun to watch you do that. And engaging. The topic we're working on is overpopulation. Is overpopulation something we should be concerned about?
Yes, it is. We are currently way over capacity, the Earth, in order to care for all the life that's on it. Our Earth, it kind of tops out at about 2 billion humans as far as being able to really responsibly care for it. And we've got over 8 billion right now. So it is a point of concern in how we manage that.
So should we control our population growth?
I don't personally believe that it is up to us to eliminate pre-existing humans on controlling our population growth. I think that we should be mindful of how we replace ourselves on this planet. I really think we should be mindful of that.
Like how many offspring we have?
Yeah, and this gets into some really heavy issues for people because people are called to have 5 and 6 children. Okay, there's somebody like me who never had a kid and lots of people who never have kids. So they might be filling in for those of us that haven't had children. Yet I do think it is important to be mindful that it's not just about passing on the name. We literally live on a rock that is running out of resources. And especially with our consumerist hoarding mentality, we are hoarding a lot of those resources, destroying them in order to create a cost to purchase ratio that is higher for business. And so, I think it's important that we are mindful. I don't know that I would perhaps use the word control. I think I might substitute that with, I think it's deeply important to be mindful about how we are continuing to populate the planet.
Yeah, that's good. I just looked up the population. It's 7.442 billion.
Oh, we're not quite over 8. That's good. That's good.
Experts say that the population of Earth will reach 10 billion by the year 2100.
Oh, that's not good.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
So we're talking about resources. What resources in particular should we be the most concerned with?
Water. Oh man, Tate, when I look forward into the future, every single timeline we've got now, and let me explain timelines briefly so our listeners know what I'm talking about. We have free will, obviously, gang. We're not just chess pieces being moved on a chessboard by some angry god. We get to choose what we do.
The angels don't influence that at all?
They can't make us make a decision. They can assist us with decisions we've made. And kind of like a curling team, they can get out in front with a little brush and try to slow the rock down or speed it up, but we've already set something in motion. So,
okay.
Yeah, they can't really affect what we've done. Unless the only time I've seen that is there is chaos on this planet. There is random scientific chaos. And maybe it's not my day to die in a car wreck, yet it's somebody else's lesson to inspire a life-changing event for others. So my car is T-boned, my car rolls into an oncoming semi-truck, except I've got other stuff I got to do. I do see those angels once in a while going, whoa, 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 party foul, and just putting enough of a buffer in there so I'm not dead. I might come out with some bruises. They do that periodically because we do have a lot of crazy chaos here.
All right, so back to water.
Yes, water. Thank you. So water in these timelines is going to be an imminent problem. And we are already seeing it in Flint. We're seeing it down with the Hopi Nation. We're seeing large corporations buying aquifers and literally sucking all the water out of those aquifers and putting them in plastic water bottles and selling them. So clean water access, even in places like, here's beautiful Montana, we don't even think about it here, yet a city like Billings, where I'm from, its sole water source is the Yellowstone River. And if anything sullies that water source, which it very well could with the oil plant right up the road, with a pipeline that runs right under the river and has burst into the river before, if Billings, for instance, has sullied water, they have zero backup. They have one reservoir that's going to last 12 hours and then they're done. And that is one example of dozens and hundreds and thousands of cities across the United States that keep our clean water as a thing for granted, basically. Water's going to be really rough, drinkable water.
Yeah, so there's always going to be a lot of water due to the water cycle, but the quality of water.
That is a very good way to put that. And again, mindfulness. If we do not choose mindfulness and how we continue to move forward, then we will reap the lesson of having to be mindful because the clean water is so scarce that it just becomes scary for people.
Are we mindful?
I do not believe we are.
Are you mindful?
I try to be mindful. I am not entirely mindful. There are ways that if I am just gut-wrenchingly honest with myself, I drive a Jeep. And my Jeep gets decent gas mileage, but it's, I don't know, maybe 34 miles to the gallon on the highway and maybe 17 in town. Yet it's not a super gas efficient vehicle. I put gas in my car. I burn those fossil fuels. I do ride my mountain bike, yet I run late. I do this, I do that. I don't make enough time for myself. So I jump in my car and I go. Sometimes I'm great about recycling, and then gosh darn it, my schedule's huge. My daughter has volleyball practice, and that stuff just goes right in the trash. So
your daughter, you adopted a daughter.
She is, I haven't legally adopted her because her wonderful father and her stepmom are still in her life. This is my wife's daughter. I am her bonus mom. I'm her bonus mom.
All right, cool. I wanted to clarify that.
Yes. So I try to be mindful, Tate. I do. And probably the most mindful area that I am consistent in is in consciousness, because that's my field and that's my passion. And I get disappointed in myself when I let the earth down, and I do. That's something I'm working on.
You were on our past event where it was called The State of the World, and we posed the question whether a pandemic would happen, World War III would happen, God would fix it, or we would solve our problems. Is any of our outcomes within those categories?
Oh, that's the best question. That's awesome. Let me think on that for 2 seconds here. Nature, to quote Jeff Goldblum's character from Jurassic Park, nature always finds a way. We can say God is nature. We can say God is an omnipotent being. We can say science is God or is nature. I tend to think all of those things are one thing. And nature will ultimately balance itself. For instance, not to be, negative Nancy here, yet we end up with a shortage of clean water. We end up with disease. We end up with people dying. We end up with people killing each other for clean water. A balance of the population begins to naturally occur because we have not been, in my observation, responsible stewards of where we live. So we reap the benefit of not being able to support all the life. I don't believe God's going to come down and strike us dead. My experience with God, not that I'm God's press person or anything, or I didn't have coffee with God last Tuesday, yet my experience in translating these angels is that God is that parent that has this is my analogy for God, this being, this energy that would be like a parent that has so much faith in our innate miracle capacity and ability to turn things around that parent just sits back on its hands and says, oh man, I know how this is going to end and it's going to get awful rough, but you're going to learn to be stronger for it. And I'm going to give you everything you need. And I'm just going to keep pumping you love and you can do it, man. Come on.
So you feel that way for humanity?
Yes.
So in your mind, it's a mix of all of these, resources going bad, causing conflict, causing disease, kind of all at once in a mixture of different ways.
Yes.
To kind of balance population out.
And that is, to me, when I look ahead, I do see losses of life. And it's devastating and it's horribly sad. Yet at this point, you can't stop an avalanche once it leaves the edge of the mountain. You have momentum that takes it. You have gravity that takes it. We have made choices, not just in the United States, but in the world. But I'm going to talk about the U.S. because I live here. We've made choices in the United States since the 1960s that have been adding to the problems that we're going to be seeing in 2020 all the way through 2028. And so now it's a question of how do we surf the avalanche productively? Do we let millions of people get buried? Do we all teach people to surf? What is our choice here?
What is it?
My hope is we teach people to surf because we can mitigate. There will be losses of life. We can offset those losses of life with working together and with education and doing things outside of the corporate box. And that's my hope, is that people will begin to see that that's not just a poofy idea, that is a necessity for survival.
As a psychic, aren't you supposed to know?
Which part?
What's going to happen?
Which part?
All of it. What's our future? Are we going to get out of this alive or not?
A bunch of us will. A bunch of us will not. That's literally what's going to happen. We are going to have a lot of geothermal events. We're going to have Yellowstone is not going to go anytime soon, everybody. So chill. Yet we are going to have. It's true. I live right over there. I'm good with it. By the way, if it does go,
you'll have about 3 minutes.
I want y'all to know this. If Yellowstone goes, I want you to picture me on my beautiful back deck with a shot of tequila, sitting there looking at this beautiful cloud barreling over the mountain with my wife and going, well, isn't that something? And I did not feel a thing because that 5,000 degree cloud is going to vaporize me like a Crispy. But, we literally there will be losses of life. And people say, you're spreading fear, Danielle. You're spreading fear. No, I'm not. I'm telling the truth. We can lessen that loss of life, but there will be losses of life because of where we're at on this planet. And I believe very strongly that there are certain souls. I don't get this part. This is way above my pay grade. That came down here to help us during this time frame. Some of us are going to stay to clean up the poo that we left, and some of us are going to get a punch out early and go to the party barge and have a margarita while the rest of us stay here and slog through the crap. So
the question was for later, but what happens when we die?
It's been my experience that when we die, we have this is a science thing. We have up to 3 ounces of energy that leaves the body. It's amazing. They've medically actually measured this. And when we die, actually the body just quits working. We never die. We keep trucking and we go back to this incredible universal source. If you want to call it heaven, if you want to call it a different dimension, we continue onward. And that consciousness is maintained. Everything we learn from this life, we may or may not choose to saddle up in another flesh pony and go for it again, or we may stay on the party barge. That's up to us.
But so the party barge is a spiritual world?
The spirit world, heaven. It has not been my experience that people actually get judged and go to hell. I've never seen that, which makes people really mad because there's people that people really want to see go to hell for a punishment. But again, what kind of God would say, oh, you're wounded in life. Well, you're broken. So now we're just going to throw you out like a spare part that got broken on the conveyor belt and you're no longer valid. So that's not been my experience that people go to hell.
Do humans have authority over Earth?
That is a fascinating question. The Earth has authority over Earth. Human hubris dictates that we have authority over the earth, over animals, over the sky. Biblically, you go back to the Old Testament, right? And you've got God talking to Adam. And God says, I give you authority over all these things. You want to know something fascinating about the word authority? I know you know some amazing rabbis. Have them talk to you about the word authority in Hebrew. It really does translate.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I've got a rabbi in mind.
There you go. It really does translate in context more to stewardship. You are the steward of these things, not authority over. But we love to think we're the top of the food chain, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, all those pyramids say that we are.
The pyramids.
The food pyramids.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was talking about the pyramids of Giza. I'm like, actually, God, I think Sirius AB and the folks from those off-world realms might be the top of the food chain with those suckers. But yeah.
Can humans destroy Earth?
We can destroy our living conditions on Earth. We do not have the capacity to actually kill this planet and inhibit its ability to regenerate itself. We can absolutely destroy a hospitable environment for us, yes.
But over time, it'll come back because we can't destroy Earth. Can humans go extinct?
Yes, and we've done it 2 other times almost entirely.
Where?
The first time, well, I'll tell you, let me back up. The angelic realm refers to this as the 3rd epoch of humans. Now, they're not talking epoch in terms of our timelines. This is humans are OS 3 right now. And apparently...
What's OS 3?
Operating system 3. You know, like if you have like OS 1, that was a Mac, and then OS 3 comes out as better.
Sure.
So we're apparently OS 3. And we're now finding, Tate, this is so interesting, big pyramids that are under the water off of China that are 100,000, 200,000 years old. And we thought that our version of Cro-Magnon man, humankind, Cro-Magnon was here only for maybe 60, 50,000 years in our current incarnation. What we're finding is we've been here before and before and before. And catastrophic events on the earth changes, have wiped us out over and over again. This is the first time that we actually have fully contributed to the speed up of natural earth events that generally try to take us out anyway. This is the first time we've put a turbo engine on that sucker and ripped it open.
If we're gonna get wiped out, should we follow Elon Musk to Mars? Should we just give up on Earth and get on that bandwagon?
Let's not give up on Earth. We still, again, some people will perish. How many is up to us? We can't save everybody from dying in certain events that are coming. And do I want to colonize Mars? Yes and no. And I'll tell you why in a second. Yet giving away Earth, this place, our lesson in this time frame is how to work together with those 7+ billion people to create a different outcome, because we do have technologies that can help us at this time. We got to stop fighting. Yet, if we keep fighting, we give away the collective bridge to genius.
Fighting amongst each other.
Correct. Yeah.
What's on your mind right now?
Mars.
Yeah. Is there anything we're missing on the topic that do you think we ought to consider?
I want to just touch on your Mars point, Tate, because Mars was actually in a Goldilocks zone at one time. And the universe is expanding. And it's continuing to expand. We now know that there are supermassive black holes, billions of times the size the size of our sun, that are on the edges of the universe, and they're called quasars. And they are moving away from us so quickly that we can't even quantify the speed at which they're moving. Yet it's like if you can imagine people running across the field opening a flag, they're pulling the universe open. So Mars at one time had a beautiful atmosphere. It had water. It had a very similar terrestrial environment as we do. And as it has moved out of its Goldilocks zone, which was not Earth's exact Goldilocks zone because Mars has a different mass than Earth does, all of its atmosphere was lost. So we can go to colonize Mars, or we can spend that money and technology and the type of cooperation it would take internationally to actually save our planet here. And I am raising my hand right now to say, Elon Musk, you rock. I'd love to talk to you about a deep space engine design I have that runs completely on dark matter that I happen to download from some off-worlders. It's not mine, but you can borrow it. However, let us try to engage our genius where we live.
Danielle Egnew, thanks so much for being here. I can't wait to see you in November on our population growth event at the Rialto. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tate. It's always a pleasure.
That's a wrap on this episode. And as always, there's a lot to consider. But one thing is certain. As humans, we approach big topics from very different angles. This episode was brought to you by the Montana Governor's Office of Economic Development, the City of Bozeman, 10 Directions, Hatch, the Yellowstone Theological Institute, Montucky Cold Snacks, the Nova Cafe, Zocalo Coffee House, Whistle Pig Korean, Dean Zesty Booch, Bliss, the Sola Cafe and Market, Shank Construction, Ben Johnson Photography, Loken Productions, Superfluous Industries, and Blunderbuss. A shout out to our editors and media team, Pat Loken, Jessup Sandoval, Allison Gregory, Shannon Hughes, Jessica Byerly, Jacob Desch, Nathaniel Johns, and Nicholas Hill. A special thanks, as always, to Debbie Shank, Joe Fedora, Ethan Hoare, and Elliot Canfield. Do you have an issue that's riddled by gridlock in your community? We want to hear from you. Shoot me a message at tate@iaminterchange.org. That's tate@iaminterchange.org. Until next time, share airtime and don't ruin dinner.